In this episode, Hans Cook shares his transformative journey from the field of chemistry to the football pitch, highlighting how his personal struggles with mental health shaped his career and advocacy. Hans discusses personal journey from earning a master's degree in chemistry and working in drug discovery to experiencing burnout and shifting his focus to mental health advocacy. Football as a support system, how football has provided a sense of community and support throughout his life, helping him navigate challenging times. Mental health in football, the role grassroots football plays in supporting mental health, the impact of community and belonging, and the importance of creating safe and welcoming environments in sports. Challenges and barriers, addressing the stigmas and pressures in football regarding mental health and how to build more open and supportive conversations. Balancing passions and well-being, Hans' insights on managing multiple passions, avoiding burnout, and the importance of rest and recovery.
So today I've got Hans Cook from Berks and Bucks FA. So Hans, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Been looking forward to this taking us a few weeks to get it down, and we're here now. So really appreciate this. Just can we kick off by who you are, what you do, who you do it for, and why you do it?
Yeah, of course, perfect. No, thanks, Danny. Again, really looking forward to this conversation. So business support is my role at Berks and Bucks FA. So the administration side of things, really. So I've been there just coming up to 2 years. That's my career in football. This was my first kind of, should we say, foot in the door. But it's a sport that I've loved since I can remember, and it's always been a passion. So when the opportunity came up to work within the game, I just thought I'd take that leap, and here I am now.
Brilliant. So looking at, I've done a bit of research on you, and I see that you've got a master's degree in chemistry.
That's correct. Yeah.
Is that correct? How does that come about? Is it right that it's drug discovery?
Yeah. So it was a master's in chemistry for drug discovery. So as part of that as well, I did a year at GlaxoSmithKline, who are a big pharma, basically pharmaceutical company. That was in Stevenage, their site. Yeah. So actually for the year I went down and saw a lot of the Stevenage games. Football's always been a part of it, whether it was my career or whatever. I try to always get along to my local team, which is something we'll come on to. But so growing up, school was I didn't always have necessarily the easiest childhood, so to speak, in terms of my own story. So it was very unsettled. So parents went through a divorce when I was about 10 years old, the age that I was starting secondary school. And for me, education was something I could control when there was a real lack of control around me. So I kind of dived headfirst into my studies, and academia and chemistry was a subject I just found I was pretty good at. And I think because of that, and I enjoyed getting the praise from the teachers or fellow students, because it's a subject that a lot of people, they see chemistry and they go a little bit like, oh no, that's not for me.
It's very complex, isn't it?
Complex, and it's quite mathematical, but again, I've got quite a numbers brain. I think in numbers, so it was something I found I was good at, and I just enjoyed being good at something, feeling like I had control. So that was what I went to study at university. Went to uni in Bath, which I loved. Great city, really good sports sides as well. So I was nowhere near the football team at Bath Uni, but we did. I played for chemistry football, so not quite the same, but that was my. I did score in the big derby against Natural Sciences though. So hey, no one's here to listen to that. But when I went to university, I went single-mindedly with, I want to then go on and do a PhD, and I want to become a doctor, and I want to be an academic. I was very much on that path because that was what had given me validation. I'd felt like I was good at it, and so it wasn't necessarily a passion. It came from, I found something I could control. It was, and then
just thanks for sort of putting in there about your childhood and what happened. As someone of your age now and your experience, how did that, it's a traumatic thing, parents splitting up. My mum and dad did when I was 6, so I get what you're saying. How did that affect you looking back now?
So looking back now, And through kind of the course of, since I had my kind of experiences with mental health and have gone through some kind of therapy and really look back at that part of my life, I realized it affected me a lot more than I probably acknowledged or recognized. I think for me, a big thing is, and I spoke about it, kind of validation bit. And so in the family home, we didn't necessarily, so I've got a couple of sisters as well. And so like we were just at home with mum. So she was busy working a full-time job, had three of us. And so there wasn't really time for, you know, how was your day at school? How are you feeling? And so I'd never really felt that my voice was necessarily, or how I felt was necessarily important. And it comes down to that conditional love, conditional value. I had always seen it as conditional, not unconditional. Hence, I wanted to do as good as I could at school, and I wanted to go and get a PhD because I wanted people to see me. And I wanted people to know that, you know, I'm here and I'm important. And so there's a lot of pressure I put on myself, and I'm still unlearning it now. And we say how busy I am with things I do, work, and then my podcast, and then the Cappuccino platform, and then I volunteer at Didcot. So I'm a busy person, and I'm trying to unlearn that you don't always have to be proving your worth to people and to myself. So that's probably a big thing that's come from it, which now I'm aware of. It's like, it was like a light bulb moment when I was like, oh, so that's why when I was struggling, I didn't ask for help, because at home we didn't talk about feelings, we didn't talk about things like that.
I think like maybe because I'm not, sort of talking about your family here, but maybe in families that happens to. I think there's like maybe an element of like survival mode, so for your mum, she's working, and her first instincts are to ensure that you're, warm, clothed, safe and happy, and then is the time for anything else around that when you're bringing up, how many said you have 2 or 3 other sisters?
So I've got 2 sisters. I'm the oldest.
So 3 kids, single parent, working, it's there's only so many hours in a day, and there's only so much you can stack up here, can't you, to deal with, and I totally get that, and so you've been good at chemistry and finding something that you excelled in, and that people would say, Hans, fantastic, and that gave you that. I think, like you said, you mentioned there, like the self the self, I can't remember the term you used, but proving to yourself first that you were good or you were worthy and you could do something, and then afterwards other people.
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot proving to myself, I think, and part of it was probably, and I mean, I'm very grateful for the fact I went down that education route and that, because there's other ways that people, I don't want to use the term cry for help, but like cry for attention. It was almost like, look at what I can do, look at what I'm doing. But then even now, when I look back, the times I was maybe told, we're proud of you, we love you, etc., they were only when I'd achieved something. And that's definitely something that was a learned behavior then, that if my manager or if my colleagues or my partner is going to be proud of me, I have to keep achieving.
I get that.
Which is then a lot of pressure, because you're constantly thinking, what can I do here? But I think you mentioned about that proving to myself. So a term I like is I created a story about myself, that I am the chemistry guy, and this is my path, and I created that character and created that story. And so when that then came away, which was, I guess, another big part of my story, when then I moved away from that, that was the hardest thing. That was the internal conflict of, who am I?
Who am I now? So how did you come away from what you were doing to the next step? What triggered that? What made that happen? Was it a conscious decision? And then what things were you fighting internally when that happened?
So, being honest, it wasn't a conscious decision. It was a have to, really. It was through burnout. Just had a breakdown, basically. So I'd then gone and got a place on a PhD. I was absolutely buzzing. I was like, I'm on this path that I'd said I was going to create. I was only 21. I'd got on a PhD, won awards at uni, and then suddenly you go from a place where you can kind of stand out, maybe by just hard work and by effort. So then on a PhD program, and the nature of research it's not always going to work.
Right.
And I couldn't disconnect the experiments and the chemistry failing from me failing.
Right.
So my coping mechanism was to do more hours, was to do more work. And after about 6 months of doing probably 7 till 7, 6 days a week, no annual leave, no holidays, my body just, you know, it was catching up with me. And I said I'll take 1 day off to my professor. Took 1 day off, and I never went in the lab again. Like my body, as soon as I stopped, it was like, I allowed myself to stop, and it all just caught up with me. And then thankfully have good people around me, my partner who I'm still with now, friends and etc. Had a good circle. But the conflict for me was realizing that I didn't love this science, I didn't love this passion. When I realized I'd created this all because I wanted validation, was a real big internal conflict. That was the hardest thing. So yeah, it was a tough time. Ended up being off work afterwards for about 6 months. Had a period of time just, you know, signed off basically. And at that point it was still difficult. There was almost that shame, that guilt, because people, all of the friends I'd had through university, that was what they knew me for. But I think something I would advise anyone really is that, you know, those stories we create of ourselves, and that people around you, it's a bit of a cliche, but like those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter, in terms of the fact that I wasn't going to go on this journey. The people who really are important to me and that know me for who I am, they didn't care. They didn't care that I wasn't going to get this qualification. And as soon as I realized that, it helped me to, you know, get back on my feet a little bit.
Yeah, like a burden got another burden gone, because it's that worrying about other people, which we all do, don't we? And I said to my missus, I said, my wife, and I said to my son, I said, you know, the greatest freedom is not giving a stuff what people think about you. And that's not being disrespectful to people and not doing things that are wrong. It's just not having that concern that what will people think. If you're a good person, you live life and don't hurt others, why should you care what people think, you know? And it's like, I think like those that, you know, I think sometimes we're conditioned by society to not stand out, aren't we? You know, to fit into the pack. But then if you look at people who, as individuals or society, we look up to, they're all people that have broke from the pack, aren't they? That's, you know, so everyone that you think, oh, she's good, they're great, that they're all ones that have put themselves above the parapet and done something. Because the only time you can do something brilliant, and I don't mean, you know, cure a disease, it just means do something that you're good at. You have to put yourself out there, don't you? And it's like you with the podcast. I'm sure that at the start were pretty scary.
Yeah, definitely. It's putting yourself in a position to, you know, you say like putting your head above the trenches almost, and head above the standard pack, and you're putting yourself out there. So there is that vulnerability, and I'm doing something different. I'm new. There's going to be mistakes. It's not going to be perfect, but you know, I think you've got to take that risk to get success, and otherwise, as you say, you're just always a part of the pack.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, and I don't. There's nothing wrong with being part of the pack. I just think that, you know, we've all got to try and think what we're good at and try and do it. And I think the majority of people don't follow that path because they're scared of what people might think. And it's I'm not saying that's wrong, because I'm like that. You know, as I don't care what people think, there's still parts of what I do that I'm thinking, you know, should not, you know, and it's human nature. But I think those that do that get to know the self better, I think, as well, you know, because it's the greatest freedom ever, I think, not caring what people think. It is. I really think that.
Yeah, it is. There's elements that I'm there with certain things. Obviously, it's still it's human nature to kind of to think about that, and particularly at the moment. Well, I say at the moment, or this day and age, with so much social media. I certainly have made real connections, and I'm very grateful for social media, because I guess during that time when I was off, that's when I created Cappuccino, which is for those listening who aren't aware. So basically, it's just it started as an Instagram page, basically. It was going to be reviewing cafes in Oxford, because that's Didcot's where we're living at the time, still am now, just near Oxford. So I needed something to get me up on my feet, get me out of the house, like feel like a purpose, because I've always been a purpose person. I was just on the wrong path. I told myself my purpose was this chemistry, but actually I have now found it is mental health awareness, hence we're sat here. It's amazing conversation, particularly in a football space. But I so started this Instagram page. I didn't have my face to it or my name to it because there was a little bit of that shame and guilt still, and I just wanted to review cafes, and then started to say a little bit about, I'm doing this because I'm signed off work. I got a bit of a passion for coffee as well as football, and then those posts got traction. And again, it's like you said, going right back to the start of when we were chatting, it might even be before we hit record, you say people love people want to hear about people's stories, and that's what really connects us, which is amazing. And I think that's what football's so good at as well, is crossing language barriers, crossing socioeconomic barriers.
Universal, isn't it?
Yeah, we love the game. And so that has now grown. It's about 5 years ago now, but it's grown to having the podcast. I've got my own coffee blend with a roaster in Oxford, Jericho Coffee Roasters. Proceeds go to a local mental health charity, Restore. I'm also sponsor at Didcot Town Football Club. They've now got a charity partnership with a local mental health charity, and this community is all kind of built from me starting an Instagram page when I really felt at my lowest, and taking that risk and saying, actually, this is a passion. Maybe I should just dip my feet in and see what happens.
That's validation. Every time someone likes a post or comments on a post or listens to your podcast or buys your coffee, it's validation. And it's a good feeling, isn't it? It's like, you think, I can do this, or it is making a difference, or it does work, and I want Daft to think that it's a good idea, and that's a validation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's also lovely that people care, for a start, but the likes are great, the shares are great, the engagement's great, but the thing that's really been amazing is people that I've met, connections from that. I've had people that I met on Instagram, and then we've then gone and become real friends, but also messages from people, some people I've known, maybe people I went to school with, people who knew me at that time when I was before I was aware of who I really was and the mental health, and them saying how, it's amazing to see, or I've been struggling with this or that. And that's the things that are amazing seeing, because you don't know. It's similar with yourself and the Vault and Football Mental Health Alliance. You're never really going to know the size of the impact that you're making.
No, you just go with your gut, don't you? And you think, I think there's something here, I'm going to go for it, and you do. And I like yourself, you make mistakes on the way. I've worked for myself for longer than I can remember, and it, like in any experience in life, there's more kicks in nether regions than there are praise and everything like that. But it just teaches you so much, and it's the best thing I've ever done, because it allowed me to get to know myself. It did, and I look back and think, at time you think, why is this happening? And I can look back now and I know exactly why it was happening and what it's given me. Sometimes when you're going through the storm, you don't see that, do you? And what a good quote I saw was, things happen for me, not to me. And sometimes when you didn't eye of a storm, you don't always see that. But when you look back and you think, I know why that happened, and I know what it's given me, and I know what it's allowed me to move on to next. So I know, like you've mentioned before, that obviously football's a passion of yours and things. How, you've mentioned that football has helped you through tough times and such like. Can you expand on how football has served as a support system for your mental health, and how being part of a community has made a difference?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, the two are almost synonymous, football and community. They've been my communities. And again, maybe it makes so much sense now when I think about my journey and my childhood, particularly about that feeling a part of something. And often I know maybe people don't like the term family for workplaces, etc., because it's not a family really, because it's a bit different. But in terms of the football, like family, community, just people who from different walks of life, different ages, and you go there and you just all have this shared passion and support your team. And I think for me, I noticed how important it was maybe when I made friends with people who were also willing to be vulnerable at the game, if that makes sense. And that's something is a real big part for me. Or I've got a couple of friends, so I'm a Wickham fan for my sins. If any Reading fans listening, we're there's no peace. but yeah, let's not go into that. There's a whole story there. But but there's a couple of friends who I made just from going to the football, and we have a little routine where we'll just meet up, go to a local coffee shop, have our lunch, and just chat and see how we're doing, and then we go to the game. And I would never have met those people if I didn't have the football. So I think that's something that's big for me. And now even at say Didcot Town, which is a club that I'm involved at, and the club has helped make the town feel like a home for me. Because that's where all my connections are, or and even now if I'm seeing someone just in the supermarket or something, it's nice to have friendly faces where you live. And it's not always see someone to make friends, I think.
It's I think like for me, like some people that don't follow or are involved in football think it's just about those people on that grass pitch playing a game, and like you've alluded to there, it's not. Match day is the game sometimes is just the thing that's happening. What happens before, what happens after. So you'll get some people, your classic football fan is going to the pub for a few before, meeting the mates, going for a few after. But now things have changed, haven't they, Hans? Like you say, you'll go to a coffee shop, have a meal, have a chat, and that's come about because of 22 people on a football pitch kicking a ball about. So there's so much more that football gives us, I feel. I do, and so how did it help you then? How did it help you in that place where you were?
So I think for me it was amazing when I've been in my darkest times, and so I've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, something that I live with. It's the both can be challenging, because depression almost sometimes makes you feel like you don't care, and then anxiety makes you feel like you care too much. And there's this conflict in my head. But one of the hardest things for me, and people may be able to relate to this, is doing activities or doing things that you would normally find joy in or find energy from or passion in, and maybe not feeling that again. And I certainly have had that in times with activities, even at times playing football. But for me, that watching the game would always just spark something in me. I don't know if it's just come from when I was younger, that team, and it matters because it doesn't matter as well. Like, I've got a lot better now. If my team wins or loses, as long as I enjoy the game, it's fine. I know it's not always the case, and football's an emotional game. It's part of why we love it. But it helped me just to feel, just watching the results or being able to share conversations, even if I didn't have the energy to, really go into the deep conversations with friends. At times when I was kind of felt a bit cut off from the world, because someone would message me, "Oh, did you see the game?" And so for me, it's been a really, really big part of my life. Even at times when I've maybe, not had much of an appetite for life, at times there's always that little bit of appetite for football, and it's kept me.
How did you overcome that though, Hans? How did you, because I'm thinking, obviously we all have anxiety manifests itself in different ways, as does depression in all of us. And I spoke at a breakfast meeting on mental health this week, and one of the people there said, at some point we all have some form of depression, so, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful to people that suffering and things like that. And it made me think that I get that, but what did you do when you were in that place, when you thought, I really imagine, anxiety, sometimes not wanting to leave the house, depression, having I don't really care about something that I love so much, and that doesn't necessarily have to be football, it can be anything in life. What did you do? How did you overcome that?
So I think it's an interesting one because there's obviously it's an ongoing journey, and it's something that I will be living with for the rest of my life. But certainly having those coping mechanisms, I think the biggest thing was accepting it. Well, recognizing it and then accepting it were the two biggest things. And again, that only came from when I had that kind of breakdown, burnout. So for the first 22 years of my life, I didn't really know what mental health was. It wasn't something I'd ever been educated on, and hadn't needed to be, because in my mind I was, all good, and I was on this path to become, a great scientist.
Yeah.
That was what I cared about. But I think the biggest thing is talking, and sharing how I was feeling, and accepting that, as I say, with myself, before I could accept it with others. A big part of that was therapy. So I've been through, a number of different kind of chunks of therapy in my time, and just really getting stuff off my chest, sharing it, and just speaking in a way that is, you're not going to be judged. And often with close ones, with loved ones, you're not going to be judged.
No.
When you're in that space, you say about in that storm, that what you need is to speak to someone who's completely removed from your life. So that's helped. But I think as well, helping others really helps me. In that way, sense of seeing, like, maybe the messages from people saying, oh, it's great to know I'm not alone in this, and I'm great to know. So for me, that kind of happiness can be like providing happiness or to others.
Definitely.
I'm not the most important, but like, it's important to give, and sharing my story helps. Whether it helps me because it's cathartic and it's almost therapeutic to talk about how I'm feeling, but at the same time being vulnerable and seeing that allows vulnerability in others. I don't know if that's really answered the question.
No, I totally get that. 2 examples, like, at the minute, I was speaking to my best friend yesterday, and his wife, she's going through chemotherapy for breast cancer. They've had a horrendous time, as anyone does that's, going through that type of thing. And she's just finished her last session today, and I've seen a WhatsApp come through, and I think it's going to be her ringing the bell. But they do, when they've gone through the session. And he said to me today, he said she's thinking about diarising it, and I said, tell her to do it, because it'll help so many people. He said she didn't want to do it during because she didn't want sympathy, and she but now she's done it. She said, I said, tell her to do it all. I said, because my wife previously had ulcerative colitis, and we found her old blog that she did 10 years ago, and the amount of comments on there from thank you so much, I thought it was only me, classic. And what people say about mental health, I thought they were only me, and I thought and I just do it because it helps you, because you're getting things off your chest, and then that feeling that you get from others coming back to you and saying that you've helped them doubly helps you, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And I think no, that's amazing news about your mate's wife as well, and hopefully, as you say, all the best to her, and but diarising it 100%, because even, and like, I think that with the podcast or some of the, it's funny, I'm not the best at journaling, but I feel my platform is almost an online journal for me. That's my way of doing it, and that's what I think to people as well. Don't put pressure on yourself. Do it a certain way, whatever works for you. As long as it's getting it out of your head and onto the page or onto then that's amazing. But and I feel better. I feel like it's weightlifting. Then like you said, it's people coming back to it. Great, that's an added bonus. But for me, it's so important to really like reflect on how you are feeling, what genuinely gives you joy, what you genuinely love doing, and you would love doing if no one was watching or no one was, judging you for it. And just do more of those things, really.
It's like self-therapy, isn't it? It's like, sometimes we can't always see a counsellor or a therapist for a number of reasons, but that's self-therapy, like you said. I think really good point of, like, what you said there is about people talk about journaling, and it is brilliant, but sometimes it's sitting down and writing it, where you hit the nail on the head. What we can do nowadays is just speak into a phone and put that out in whatever form we feel on, online, and it's just as powerful.
I've got friends I know of who sometimes will even just record a voice note, don't send it to them, or send it to someone, and they just listen back to it themselves. And or even if you don't listen to it, just saying it, the act of speaking it, you kind of clear the head and it gets it off your chest. I've had it even with if I'm struggling with something or feel like I've made a bit of a mistake at work or something, because it happens. But great relationship with my manager, but almost an example, like it was Friday just gone, the week before, where there was something in my head and I was a bit like, oh, this is going to sit with me all weekend. So I just sent an email, just said almost like, you don't need to reply. I'm just letting you know. I know this happened. I know this is what we learned from it. Great weekend, good done. But the fact that I sent it just made me feel like, okay, that I'm not going to be sitting with that all weekend. And then actually, when we then had a meeting this week, again, there wasn't a reply, but then started the meeting. Oh, I really appreciate you sending that, because it's then also my manager saying, okay, he's acknowledging the mistake that was made, accepting responsibility for it, and we don't have to then have that awkward, do we bring it up, do we?
Because you'd also then, I think as well, when you've got something that you want to get out there, the longer you don't deal with it, the worse it gets, you know. And I've got a friend of mine, and he's a guy called Brad Burton, and he's one of UK's leading motivational speakers, and he's got a saying that I love, and it's stuck with me for years, and it's, the longer you run, the weaker you become. And that's the principle of that, you know, like if you want to send that email, it's going to sit with you, so you're running away from this thing that you want to get off your chest and you haven't, and it's going to, and sometimes you just get, and it's never as bad as what you think, is it? Nothing is ever as bad as what you think, and that simple act of getting it out, however it is, just it sort of frees you, doesn't it? So how did you get into working at County FA then? How did that come about?
So actually, once obviously I had that bit of period outside of work, I got back into work, and it was initially through a charity. So got back into working for them, Cancer Research UK. So it's a cause that's amazing. I definitely felt like once I'd gone from this whole research thing, I was like, I know people was my passion, really. The people thing, and that kind of explained to me why I was getting so worked up, because when you're in a lab and etc., it was quite isolating. So wanted to work in the people space, so I got a job at Cancer Research, and it was brilliant. It's 3 years there, and wasn't really looking to move on, but then I saw this opportunity come up in the local county FA, and put my hat in the ring. Just thought, you know what, I feel like the role was similar. So I was doing operational support at the charity, and I've gone into like business support in the football. So it's a similar role, but just in a field which, I mean, football, you know, so a lot of people, you know, as a kid, they say, oh, I want to be a footballer. But obviously had that period of that, but just being involved in the game, and it is just something that I've always loved. So an opportunity to get my foot in the door there would have been amazing. Interviewed, got on really well with the team, and came in. So it's about 2 years now that I've been there. And like I say, the role is business support, but I've grown, I would say, in my own confidence and in the role and the impact I can make. I feel like I've grown quite a lot since getting in there to now being, and I think that's probably where you kind of reached out and we kind of connected. I'm mental health ambassador for the county FA. And that's,
but it shows by putting yourself out there that people, it's obvious, but that's why when you do it, you think, bloody hell, I'm so glad I did that, because opportunities come, don't they? So now you're in the world of grassroots football, though. From your perspective, what role can grassroots play in supporting mental health within clubs and communities?
I think it's massive. I think it is massive. I mean, the importance that physical activity can have for mental health, for a start. Just if we're providing a space, and I mean, I don't have the fact, I know that we have around 80,000 participants in our county across players, volunteers, coaches, everything. So it's a large number. We're one of the larger county FAs, and we all know the stats about kind of like 1 in 4 people mental health. So 20,000 people potentially that are involved in the game in our county that are experiencing these challenges, and they'll be the figures are probably higher than the stats suggest. So there's the fact that it's given them, maybe whether that's training, volunteering, we spoke about before how it's helped myself. I know that I'm not unique in that, that people have these clubs that are the heartbeat of communities, and so much more than just the game. And it's keeping people feeling a part of something, the friendships, the sense of a belonging that football can bring is amazing. And I think we're very aware of that, or I'm very aware of that in my role, and the role of the organisation is, you know, yes, we're there to make sure football happens, but really it's to make sure it's like a welcoming environment, it's a safe environment, and people can really thrive and you know, gain those skills as well. That I think, so for example, young people playing the game, it's a safe environment hopefully to make mistakes and learn that that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, your teammates have got your back. You know, you can try again, you go again. So yeah, so much it can do. And so I think it's important. And there obviously is the flip side of sometimes it can be, you know, there's with every positives there are negatives as well. We were talking before we hit go about discipline levels. Behaviour in football is a real hot topic at the moment, off the back of the lockdowns, but it seems to still be following that trend. And again, part of that maybe is because it's a release for people. They're in this, if life is stressful, if life's getting you down. But a big thing I would say is that football's not an excuse to behave poorly. Football's not an excuse to behave a certain way. If you weren't in that football environment, would you do that on the street? Would you do that in the classroom? Because kids a lot of the time as well, it's youth football. So
that's a really good analogy, that, Hans. It's like when you said about how good it is for your mental health. What frustrates me is when I see, you know, certainly in any age group, but certainly in kids football, adults on the sideline being so vocal that they're actually suppressing the kids' confidence, ability, demeanor, personality, because they're so scared to make a mistake or put a tackle in. You know, I've seen it where a tackle goes in and it's a tackle, not wrong with it, and half at sideline who are all grown adults. Ooh, and it's like, the kids, what are you doing to them? Let it go, you know. And it frustrates me so much that they don't understand what impact that is having on those young people. It's so frustrating for me as a parent, as a coach, used to be a player. I don't get it. Why do you think? Have you got any ideas of why that might happen?
Well, I mean, if we had the answers to that, we could solve that. I mean, that'd be brilliant. But I think, and I kind of mentioned before, how football for a lot of people can be a release. And I think for the people who maybe are behaving that way, look, maybe it's, you know, it's if life's stressful, it's something that maybe if they could, they would love to in the workplace, you know, turn around and shout at someone or shout up, email, difficult call, difficult meeting. But they know they can't. There's maybe there's more consequence there, and it's, you know, for some reason, and because there's a long history of football and hooliganism and the behaviour, there is association almost, and I think it's why I said about football's not an excuse, like, or just because that's always been the case doesn't mean that we want that to carry on being the way. So they feel that on the football pitch that it's okay to let out.
I think you bang on there. I think you bang on where the professional game, it is acceptable to shout at the ref or tell the opposition.
You hear some of the chants that go on.
Exactly. And I think you're right. I think the part of it is that it's carried through into the professional game, and people think, well, that's football, but it's not, is it? You know, it's. So what do you think? There's any? Do you see any barriers in football regarding the conversation around mental health?
I think one of the biggest ones, and we hear it sometimes, is, it's an emotional game. In terms of this is almost as an excuse for the behaviour. They're like, I got caught up in the emotions and you know, it's an emotional game. But again, that it's thinking about, and you said about the words and the impact that can have on other people. Again, your behaviour, your actions is going to impact others. And just because you're letting out an emotion and maybe you feel better for it, you can't just put that onto someone else. Referees, for example, you know, they also go home and they have kids and a wife and this, that, and the other. And I think a big barrier, though, as well, is the pressure that comes from it being a competitive sport. I think we see this even at the youth level sometimes. You know, it's a cup game, it's a cup final. Suddenly, so throughout the whole season, we do equal playing time. Everyone's like, we want a player, and then sometimes you'll get to like the semi-finals and suddenly like bring a few ringers in, and it's like, now we're here to win suddenly. And how does that make people feel who, sorry, you're not playing this weekend because player from the first is coming down in. So suddenly you feel, you know, and how does that make them feel? And so I think the pressure is a big one. But I think a barrier as well is that, particularly at grassroots level, and we're indebted to volunteers who are amazing. But if you're a volunteer and you're already taking up your time to then be a coach for a side, to then be told you've also got to look out for all these behaviours and you've got to be responsible for like the mental health of the children, it's a big ask. And I think that's where things like the Vault is perfect. And it's, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but where it's maybe come from is like, we're not expecting volunteers and everyone to be the experts.
Yeah.
It's just knowing and having the confidence of where you can signpost. And that's a big thing, I think, as well.
Spot on. Yeah, spot on.
I think a barrier is that people think, oh, it's too much pressure for me to hold that responsibility for a team, kind of thing.
It is. You know, being involved in grassroots football is a big responsibility. Like you said, whether you're even a player, a coach, a volunteer, a referee. You know, I've spoke to people before, and I think, like, you know, the referee is the most loneliest place in football at any level, because, like, if you're having a bad game or crowd, you do a bad pass and someone on sideline has a go at you, you've got your teammates to rally around. If you're coach, you've got the team. The ref, like you say, at the end of the day, you're sat in the middle of that pitch and you've got no team around you. You know, like professional refs, they have, you know, assistant refs and the team. In grassroots, they don't. It's the most loneliest place in football. And it's, again, it goes back to, I think you hit the nail on the head with refs, is that they get berated on TV by the pundits, by the fans, and it just follows through into Saturday afternoons and Sunday mornings, and it's not on. It's not on, I don't think. Is the, you know, as far as like football being used to be a traditionally, you know, white working class male sport, that has obviously changed massively now, and, you know, it's a sport that encapsulates everyone, as you said at the start, no matter your background, etc. Do you see any stigma still in football around mental health?
I think we do.
Yeah,
I think there is. I think it's moving in the right direction. And even the fact that, say, for example, last week, so as Berks and Bucks FA, we did an event with Wycombe Wanderers Foundation.
Yes.
We did a mental health panel, mental health and football panel, and it was great. It, like, the fact that Wycombe supported it, so we had 2 first team players down, David Wheeler and Joe as well. So that was amazing, particularly as a Wycombe fan. You know, that little bit for me to be sat there talking to players at the club where I grew up and I fell in love with the game. And those panels like that didn't exist when I was growing up. So it was amazing, but I think, you know, it was impactful in the room. But when we think of, I said about the 80,000 participants, right, that we have in our county area, and then you look at the numbers who came back and were interested, and like, I think there is still this thing of, oh, maybe I don't want to go because I don't want to be it to feel like I need to go to that panel. And I think there's still people want to talk about it or are okay to talk about it, but often it's after a crisis or after something's happened. And really, the preventative stuff and the long term is, you know, if we're talking about it every day, and like, one of the questions at the panel, which was interesting, was, where do you see the landscape in 5 years' time? And it's an interesting answer. And I think for me, a panel like that should almost be like, those conversations should just be happening. Not all the time, but it shouldn't be a big thing that there's a panel talking about it. And it shouldn't be a first for a county, like it was the first for our county thing. And hopefully in 5 years' time, it's just a part of the conversation that, you know, we ask all our coaches to do safeguarding. We ask all our coaches to have the DBS. I know as of next year, I'm pretty sure there's a player welfare and open age football course that's coming in. And it should just be part of that. If you're going to accredit a football club and if you're going to be involved in the game, we want to support you and make sure you're just clued up on this topic as well. But at the moment, I feel there is still a bit of a stigma, particularly in the men's game. Whether, I can't speak for like, say, the women's game necessarily, but in the men's game, even at Didcot, where I'm kind of sponsor, and it's great that they've got that partnership with Restore. Even, I think, you know, you hear phrases sometimes. So I hear like, oh, the lads really need to man up and just get into this game, and like, oh, that phrase is a bit, you know, because it's just so like embedded in the, you know, but, you know,
I think that comes from blokes my age, that, and I can say that because I'm that age, you know. It does. I think, and that's come from their fathers, you know, the generation before them, because you did just you had to. There were no outlets like there are now. So what did you do? And I've spoke to so many people my age that tell me about how they now saw how their father's mental health was really poor, and they were struggling, and they probably had clinical diagnoses that weren't around now. And I think, like, for me, when you said like what you did with Wickham and the panel and things like that, I think that's amazing. And you said, you know, where would you like to see it in 5 years' time, and people talking. I think that'll become the norm, because my take on what we talk mental health is that it's a marketing exercise, and that's how I break it down simply. And I say to people, I say, brands like Nike, who are embedded in English football from men and women's first team, it's a very aspirational brand, and we all know what Nike is. We all know what Nike does. There's been a big furor about the flag on the back of the of the shirt, but ultimately everyone knows what Nike is because it's in front of us all the time, and they're brilliant at marketing. So Nike, Pure Gym, Adidas, Under Armour, Gymshark, they have monetized physical health to the point where people now actively, without even asking them, I'm going to gym, I'm taking a selfie, I've got the kit, I've got my bottle, you know, and the post on Instagram. We need to do that to mental health, you know, so people are actively talking about it, posting about it, and it's an aspirational part of the human psyche. It's the biggest part of the human psyche. So I think if you know what you're doing and what county FAs and I've seen what Berks and Bucks do, and they seem to be, you know, they are one of the ones that are doing the most. You can see that it's only going to become the norm, you know, and it's down to education. It's down to people understanding that phrases like man up and acceptable is wrong term, but it's like phrases around gender and race that aren't acceptable now. You know, it's very similar.
Yeah, and I think it's no, I love what you say about the comparison. I think was it just this morning or recently that you released a clip about talking about that and the way that Nike monetized. So yeah, I'm loving that that's come up in this conversation as well. And I think it's true because people see it. It's almost like I don't know, it's like a flex, or I'm in the gym, I'm working on my physical health. Like I say, and I think there is more of that now. So you see people saying like, but still, I think there is this. People would find it a bit more, that's a bit different. If someone was like, I had a great therapy session this morning and I had a really good chat, and suddenly my head's clearer, and but that is also great. Like that's something to be proud of. If you're taking that step to look after your mental health, it's something that is just interlinked with that physical health as well. So I think
what you said then though about someone posting and saying I've just had a good session, I've cleared my head, it goes back to what you said right at the start of this about, you know, putting your head above, you know, the parapet or above the lines and taking that risk. And it's like we said, you know, I guarantee you that someone else is gonna go, so it's not just me. And I've seen that so many times in things around mental health and feelings and, you know, things like that you just think, it's not just me. And I feel so much better now. And if more people did it, more people would do it, wouldn't they? If you know what I mean.
In position, particularly in football. I mean, I know there's some great stuff going up like the Heads Up campaign, and there's a lot like Norwich City video. It probably comes up like it's brilliant. But also I think players talking about it. But it's a big thing for a player. I've seen like recently Richarlison come out and talk about it, and I mean I haven't looked at all the comments, but I can imagine just, you know, with the social media and football, there'll be some comments in there which are, you know, negative, when actually someone coming out and saying I'm looking to take care of myself and you know, that should be something that should be applauded in the same way that, and I don't want to, you know, it's a different topic, but say you have like Jake Daniels at Blackpool and someone who's come out, because no one should have to choose between being themselves and playing the game.
I was just going to say the same. When you use that term coming out, I was just going to say the same, Hans. It is, and it's a shame that we are where we are with that, because who cares? Whether, you know, who cares? I don't get it. You know, it's one thing that perplexes me is how people think it's, you know, to judge someone because they're not what people think is not normal. There's no such thing as normal.
No, I think it's interesting that I had a conversation on my podcast with Josh Parker, he's at Oxford City at the moment, but we had the conversation more around race because he's from Antigua and Barbuda, and he's felt that he's had those experiences. He played in Eastern Europe when he was younger, so really was as a young kid. But when it comes down to that judging people, it's almost like people often attach to something that's different.
Yeah.
But like, when that becomes things that are like race or gender or like sexual orientation, but like the mental health one, it's almost sometimes maybe people attack it because it's almost a fear of, but I don't want to hear about that, because often it says more about the person doing the attacking than the person coming out. And,
it does.
About it.
It does.
Because why does that topic of conversation cause so much angst for you, kind of thing? Yeah,
it is. Funny you should mention Jake Daniels, because his agent is an ambassador for the Vault, Billy.
Okay.
And some of the stuff is Billy said to me about what Jake's had previously on social media, horrendous. And you sort of think, I can, there'll be thousands of gay footballers, won't there? And I can understand why they don't come out, because like, I don't care what someone is, as long as they're a nice person, Hans. I don't care. I'm not painting myself to be this perfect person. I don't give a shit. I honestly don't, and I just think it must be so difficult when you're in that position that you can't be yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, and I think we try football needs to work towards that, and I'd like to think there's steps in the right direction. It's such a big plus because of the size of the game and the power of the sport. That there's positives of that, there's also negatives. But no one should have to choose between being themselves and playing football.
No. I think thing is with football though, it's like society's behind the curve on sexuality, gender, race, mental health. As society, we're behind all this. We're not where we should be, are we? But football seems to be on everything behind society as well. It seems to be football seems to be always be catching up where society is, and society is always catching up where we should be. And we're never going to be perfect as are we? No, but it is. Yeah, it's just at the start of the podcast you mentioned how busy you are, so you've got all these things on, and how do you manage to find balance and take care of your mental health? Considering all these demands that you're putting on yourself, and I use that term, putting on yourself, you're choosing to, I'm not knocking that, so you went from, really, burning out over the academia and working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. You've learned from that, but then you're now involved in more things, and I've got fingers on my hands. How do you deal with it? So firstly, why do you keep yourself so busy, and how do you ensure that doesn't take you back to where you were?
So in terms of, I think, the balance, it can be with difficulty sometimes. It's definitely something that I do struggle with, and I sometimes feel like if there's a line, I do sometimes go a bit beyond that. I fall back into that chasing the validation and wanting to make a difference, and particularly I think I'm quite privileged in the position I'm in now, that I'm in a place where I'm acting on my purpose through my passions. So my passions are football. My passions are football and coffee, and my purpose is mental health awareness.
Can you just repeat that phrase to me? I love it.
Yeah, so I'm acting on my purpose through my passions.
Love it.
Yeah, so that's what I feel I'm in. But sometimes that can be difficult because there's so much I want to do in this space, and there's so much I feel I can do. And for me, a quote that I really don't like is, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. For me, that is almost a dangerous message, because even no matter how much you love what you do, rest and recovery is such an important part of keeping care of yourself. And I think you look at athletes, to use the football analogy, the rest and recovery, the amount of the size of the backroom staff now, and you've got all the nutritionists, the psychologists now, which is great to see. The player care, that part of the game is really becoming important, as important as the physical side. And that's, I think, so important to look after these players, because especially the young guys, you're putting them in this environment, and girls now the women's game's great. It's really interesting, actually. On the panel we had the Wycombe Wanderers women's captain, Bobby Lynch, and she said that what she's noticed is since the growth of the Lionesses in the women's game, some of those problems that, you know, we talk about the adults at youth football and things, they tended to just be in the men's. Now it's getting into girls football as well, because suddenly they think, well, my little daughter can be the next Lioness, or something. So it's almost as the game gets bigger and the exposure is more, you're going to get more of the good, you're going to get more of the bad. So that's a new challenge for female players. But for me, the balance is difficult. I do find that I can be quite cyclic in the way that I'll go through periods of intense activity, and then I have to catch myself and be like, whoa, let's just slow down. But my partner's huge on that. She probably spots before myself whether I am doing a bit too much. So for me, it's been learning to not take it personally, not see it as an attack, not see it's to actually listen and acknowledge, okay, maybe I am being a bit too busy. Because the me of when I was doing the academia stuff wouldn't have listened. I'd have said,
head down, keep going.
So I think listening is really important, reflecting on myself, and just, you know, understanding the importance of rest. And consistency can be a really good thing. I know in Atomic Habits they talk about consistency is better than intensity sometimes, because the way I'm a very intense, and then I slow and intense. But consistency, or being steady, I always saw it as a negative. I always saw it as being stagnant. I always saw it as being still, and I saw it as not moving forwards. But really enjoying the consistency sometimes, and that's something that I am trying to do more. Not every day I have to be, you know, changing the world. But I think as humans, though, life is a roller coaster. I don't want to quote Ronan Keating, it's an old adage, but it is, isn't it? Life is ups and downs, isn't it? You know, and you know, people, I'll say, you know, the key is finding that balance, that line of not doing too much, but no one's got that, have they? So when you're saying you're going, you know, you're having intense periods of this and then a bit of a calm, I think that you acknowledge that and know that is showing, not that you need me to tell you this, that you are, you know, you do know yourself. And it's just nice that your partner will give you that little elbow and say, look, you've gone a bit too high now, just slow down a bit. Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, something that I did want to just say on that, lost myself here. Where was I going?
So what we said at the start, I interrupted your flow then, didn't I?
No, it's fine. I think what I was saying with that. I think that's what I was going to say. So in terms of how do I keep the balance, and I'm very busy, I think we say about my purpose, and so things like my podcast, I feel like conversations like we're having now, they give me energy. They don't take my energy away. So it's finding hobbies or finding things to do in my time that I feel like energize me, and that's a really nice, although it's busy, it's something that completely switches my mind off from work stresses, life stresses, and I can fully get into a conversation. So finding things that give me energy as well as take it away.
Because that just, it's like, I always think that when you play football, you don't think about anything else. You know, I when I played when I was younger, you know, till I don't know what age I was, got too old to play. But whatever I had going on in my life, whatever I had in it, as soon as I started playing for 90 minutes, I didn't think about anything else apart from the game. And that's the same thing as what you're saying about finding things that energize me and inspire you. And I can see when you're talking, then when you're saying things, you know, you said then that this is not draining me, it's giving me energy. And I can see, because where you're talking, your whole face is lit up, your eyes are lit up, you know, literally. And you can see how much talking about and you expressing yourself is giving you that energy. It's like people say, you know, start off the day, you know, going to the gym because it gives you energy, and you think, but it's actually right, you know, it is, isn't it? You know, you think, I'm going to be knackered.
Definitely. And I think it's that, you know, like you said there, the way to use the analogy with physical health, when you exercise your muscles, you exercise everything, like your brain's the same. And I think having these conversations, but for me as well, it probably shows how much I enjoy talking about this topic, or find it really therapeutic in a way. Like this is therapy in a way, having this deep conversation, talking. It is. But as someone who for 22 years didn't do that,
No.
I didn't have that. Now I've almost, and we go back to that, not really caring what people think as much. Now I'm like, oh, I can speak on my story. I can talk about how I was feeling or how I feel, and it's okay to do that. And actually, it's positive to do that. It's more than okay.
But also, you're an expert on something. You're an expert on you, aren't you, as well? So no one, the thing about mental health with me is that no one can tell you you're wrong, because I think it's all completely. I said at this event I did the other day, one of the things I say is like, it's just like your fingerprint, completely unique to you. So no one can tell you that you're wrong or right. It's it's who you are. So just as we close, Hans, and the last question is, reflecting on your journey, which we have done, we've covered it brilliantly, and the changes you've navigated both professionally and personally. What advice would you give to others facing challenges that impact their mental health? Some nuggets we're after here.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things is, like we say, you create like a story for yourself sometimes. And so much of when I look back at my challenges, when I look back at how I dealt with it and what I would maybe advise or what I would say to my younger self, I know that's a common thing, is that you create this story so you can change it.
Yeah.
And no one cares about what you're doing as much as you do. In terms of, I felt that everyone would care about what my job was or what I was earning, what I was achieving, and no one cares about what you're doing. They care about who you are. And I think if you've got that solid circle around you, and even people, if you're unsure, you think, oh, I don't know if I want to put this on them. Trust me, they'll want to listen. They would rather hear it than find out down the line that you've been struggling. And that's something that for me was a massive change when I allowed myself to be vulnerable to those around me, without that pressure on myself of, again, because I created this story of, oh, I'm an achiever and I do this and I'm going to do this and so that for me would be a big advice. Just be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself, and it's okay if you're not thriving all the time. It's okay if you're not always moving forward, because if you're honest with yourself, then you can be honest to others about how you're feeling. And that's a big thing, I think, and not judging yourself, because we're human at the end of the day, right? That's me.
I think you bang on there about other people as well, because we all judge yourselves, but we're all judging ourselves against other people, aren't we? So like you said there, I and myself, I'll do it, and I think no one's got it figured out. No one, not even the person that is the best in the world at what they do or whatever. No one has got it figured out. So why am I different? Don't flatter myself, Dan, that I should have everything figured out. And that's what I say to people about worrying about what others think here. I sometimes say, look, don't flatter yourself, because they're more interested in themselves than you. And that's not that, it's just that we're all, because they're not looking at you and going, oh, them pants are a bit tight on him, oh, that dress doesn't fit, because they're so concerned that everyone's thinking about them that they're not actually scrutinizing you. They're scrutinizing, like when before you go out on a night, you're checking, does this fit all right? Do I look fat? I always look fat, but never mind. Myself, you do, and everyone else is the same, no matter how beautiful, handsome, successful, rich, whatever they are. And that's one thing that we all need to try and deal with. I think I totally agree with you.
Definitely, and that's that as well. Like, you're not I think it's, my sister said this to me once. I think she must have read it somewhere, but she was like, you're not the main character in everyone's story. Like, you might worry about every little detail about this thing, but to other people's lives, they're like you said, you're not the main character in everyone's story. Like, you're the main character in your story, so just make sure you're looking after number one and be honest with yourself. But and another thing, I guess, if it was advice or whatever, it would be that you can still burn out doing something you love. That's brilliant. Because I think just because you love what you're doing doesn't mean that your body's gonna, that it's possible to be doing it 100% all the time. Because I love what I do, but I still struggle sometimes because, as you said, how much I'm taking on.
That's it. If you go back to a professional footballer, they love what they do. But if they played football all day, every day, they'd end up being injured physically. And like what you've alluded to there is we're going to burn out mentally. So we're going to injure ourselves mentally, like a footballer when they're playing 80 games a season will invariably have injuries. There's been so many one-liners in this. It's been brilliant. Can you just remind me of that passion and purpose line? Because I'm going to use that as the title for this podcast.
Yeah. So, and again, so I think advice to people, I would say, if you can find a way to act on your purpose through your passions, that's massive. Because find what you want, find your why, and find what you're passionate about. If you can link them up, put yourself in a space where you're doing that, and you'll be all right.
You know what, right? I'm just thinking now, I can see a merch line with this. That you should have.
I've got a merch line.
I know you have, but you should have that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Because what I'm thinking now, right? Literally, I'm thinking I can see a Football Mental Health Alliance hoodie with the Football Mental Health Alliance logo here. That quote that you've said, and then your name under that quote attributed to you.
Maybe we'll see. We're going to start business dealings now.
I tell you that I can just see, like you see, I can see that. I really can.
I have to make one with my logo on it quick before you.
Yeah, no. I'll credit you with it. Definitely, I'm going to mock that up and send it to you. Tell you, that's a cracker.
But I think that act on your purpose for your passions, and it's so relatable to football. I think.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have a passion about the game, but then it's just as well going back to the behaviour bit, and don't let your passion overspill and then put someone else's out. Because especially as adults, when you've got children and as young people, just have that accountability for your actions, and just think about the way what you're saying, what you're doing can impact someone. Because it's a bit like with me and my parents splitting, and then with me it wasn't what was said, it was maybe what was not said. But and I don't blame parents. Like you said, the situation my mum was in was very difficult, but even as an adult now, that does impact the way that I maybe see the world. So you never know what might be said at a football game or things like that.
Brilliant. Well, Hans, can you just tell everyone where we can find you then, where we can find all these things you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of on the football side with Berks and Bucks FA, so I'm on Twitter at HansBBFA, and also if you go to kind of our account there, you hopefully see some of the things we're doing. On Instagram at Cappuccino, and that's where you'll find me. And then in the bio of the Instagram page, there's links to the podcast and links to the merch range and everything like that, and proceeds from that, and links to the coffee, and proceeds from the coffee and the merchandise go to Restore, which are a local Oxfordshire mental health charity.
Fantastic. So,
Cappuccino.
So where did the name come from?
So like I said, when it first set up, it was initially to review cafes. So cappuccino, it just had a nice little ring to it. Which is why it's quite funny now though, because it's really in that mental health space, and people think of the name and they're like, well, what's that? But then the logo is the little coffee cup with the little thing. But again, to go more into that about sometimes a conversation over coffee, it's a great way to invite to really just, it's therapeutic.
But that's what we do as like one of our social things is over a drink, whatever that drink is. A lot of our social interactions are over a drink. Do you want to go for a drink? Then that drink could be coffee, it could be alcohol, whatever. Sit down having a meal. So I think it's a perfect. It seemed one of those things that maybe started off as something and has actually become perfect for what it is now, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's grown organically. There was no aim to do what I'm doing now when I set it up. But fantastic. And we'll see where it carries on going. That's what's exciting.
Brilliant. Well, Hans, I literally could speak all day. And I said, 40 minutes. It's now 1 hour 16. So sorry about that. But no, thanks so much, Hans. Really, really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. Been amazing. The one-line is in there. I'm going to go back through these and pick them out. We'll put links to everything that you're doing. So Hans Cook, thanks so much for this. It's been amazing. Thank you, Hans. Thank you so much.
Right. Thanks, Danny. Thanks for the opportunity, and I've always enjoyed speaking on this topic. So yeah, really.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks, mate.
Bye.